Okay, welcome to our tutorials. For this tutorial, we are going to develop or create a very simple Java application of basic point of sale terminal. For this, we simply are going to have a single window application, which allows us to enter an item number and then retrieve that item number from the items database, and then provide quantity, and based on the price of the item we get also the subtotal, and have a user interface for displaying in a table all the items that is being bought by a customer, and finally conclude the transaction, ask for a cash tender, and maybe probably display a amount of change, if any, if applicable. So let's start. First of all, let me start first my XAMPP server, because we are going to use MySQL in this case. So, and we'll be opening up a browser so that we can take a look at the table structure of our database. In this case, we'll only have 3 tables: one table for items, another table for the sales transaction, and another table for the sold item, or the items that are included in that particular sales. So going into the localhost phpMyAdmin to view, so that we can view the database, and the database is store, and excuse me, there you go, there's the table structure. So we have items, which contains name, description, price, and quantity stock. Then the sold items will be the items that are sold based on this sales transaction. This keeps popping up. So anyway, let's go on and open up NetBeans, where we are, which will be the integrated development environment that we are going to use to develop this Java application. Okay, so here's our NetBeans IDE. Let's create a new project by clicking this button. So Java application. Next, we're going to call this application POS terminal, and we're not going to make a main class just yet, so click on finish. So here we are. Before we actually do our development or coding, let us first import the MySQL connector into our libraries, so that we can use the MySQL connector to communicate with the MySQL database on a Java application. So right click on libraries and click on add jar/folder, and I already have here in my Java libs the MySQL connector Java, which is version 5.1. I'm gonna click on it. So now it's there in our libraries. Now we can proceed with our development. So let's create now our user interface. It should be a JFrame form, and we call this a terminal window. Okay, add a package, and click on finish. So in this user interface, we're not going to go crazy about it. Just make it very simple as possible. So with that, we just have a date label here, date, and even our date will only be in a text field. We're not going to go crazy about it. and then let's just duplicate this one, and this will be for the, what should this be, the item number, right? I have to align these things. Okay, and maybe duplicate this one again and put it right here. So this one will be for the OR number, which should be automatic, by the way. That's same with the date. And finally here, the quantity, and we'll just make this quantity a little smaller, because this is anyway just at most 3 digits. So we have a space for our button, which only have a plus sign. And finally below here, next is a table that's going to display the items that is going to be sold, or items in the cart, so to say. And okay, I don't want this default model, so I'm gonna remove these columns down there. Okay, and call this, by the way, we have to rename our components. So this will be date field, this would be item number field, OR number field, QTY field, add button. This will be items, table. I will add a label for this. It shows our total, and make this bigger, a lot bigger in fact. I think that will be fine. And simply duplicate this one so that you can put it right here, and change the alignment to trailing. Alright, there we go. And just give it the default content of, this should be the variable name total label, and the text is the one should be PHP 0.00. So there's the total. And finally a final button to actually commit all these things and save it into the database, ask for cache tendered, and display the change if any. So let's call this conclude transaction. Okay, so that's about it for our user interface. Now for the workflow in this case is the program is going to generate the current date and display it right here, and generate the next OR number, which is going to be the next ID for sales. Okay, and then the user is going to type in the item number of the items that is being bought, and then the quantity, and once the user clicks on plus, it's going to be added onto the list, and all those in the list will be inserted. So when the user concludes the transaction, it's going to save a single row for the sales table bearing the OR number, the date of course, and insert several rows based on how many items on the table. That same number of items will be inserted into the sales sold items table. So since we are going to have, we need to have a temporary storage for the sold items before it is actually going to be written into the database. And what I have in mind is to store the sold items into a linked list or a vector, whatever collection data structure available in Java. There's plenty of them. So in my mind, I'll just use a linked list to store sold items, and based on the sold items stored on that linked list, that will also be populated on the table, which is the one that will be used to insert the data into the sold items once the conclude transaction is being clicked. So, and also, since the linked list is going to contain details about the sold item, we need to create also a class that is going to describe going to hold all the data of the sold item, which includes all the columns that is going to be displayed on this table. By the way, the columns that will be displayed on this table will include the name of the item, the description of the item, the quantity, the price, and the total. That's going to be the columns in this table. So in that case, we are the data that we need to store into the object would be name, description, quantity, and price. We don't have to store the subtotal because subtotal can be computed by multiplying quantity with the price, of course. So at this point, we are going to create a class for sold items or sold item. So click on right click, new, and Java class. We call this sold item details. Okay, I could have just named it sold items, but I just, well, I'll just continue with that. So we are going to have the data that we're going to store here would be the item, private int item ID, private java.sql.date. Oh, why am I? No, not the date. It's for the sales. It's a sold item. So int quantity. By the way, we have to also private string name and private string description, quantity, and private float price. I think that is all that we need to store in the sold items details. So let's just generate now the constructor for this to make our development time faster. So alt insert and click on constructor. Just check on all the boxes here to include all the properties in the constructor and generate. And then we're going to generate again, alt insert and click on getter setter. Just check here and encapsulate field and generate. Okay, so well, we'll just maybe add a override method for toString, which in this case will just return the name of the item. So return name. Okay, that's it. So now we have a class where we can instantiate an object into where we can store the details of the sold items. We can go back now to our terminal window, and the event of adding the sold item into the linked list, into the list, which we don't have right now, is when we click on the plus sign. So the event happens on the plus sign. So I'll just right click and action performed on the plus, not the plus sign, the add button, sorry. So here we need to check, by the way, first for validation we need to check if there is a content for the item and the quantity. By the way, the date and the OR number are supposed to be generated automatically. Well, let's add the code for that first. Private init form, and for init form we have a date field dot set text. We are going to set it with a string of a date, so we'll have java.sql date is equal to new, or java.sql date dot value of local date dot now, and we'll just set this field to that date, date dot to string. By the way, this is void. And also we need to generate the OR number. So in this case we are simply going to get the last ID of the sales, which in this case, by the way, is still blank, I think. Anyway, so we'll just have a try catch here. Just going to have SQL exception, just dump the errors on, or maybe we'll just create an error message, private void error string message component parent, which is just simply going to get java x.swing.j option pane. Let's show message dialog, and the component parent is parent, the message is the message. We need to add a title of error and java x swing.j option pane that error message. Okay, component has to be component, and SQL exception has to be imported, so control shift I, so you have there to import them. Okay, let's bump this down for readability. Okay, so here we'll simply call error ex that get message this. That's the parent. So you are going to have a result set. Oh, by the way, we still don't have the connection. So let's create the connection first. Right click here, new Java class. I'll just call this DB, class DB, and in the class DB we are going to have a private static connection, and control shift I to import public static connection get connection. This is going to throw an exception. So here we are going to have a class that for name com.mysql.jdbc.driver.new-instance, and we'll have, oh by the way, I almost forgot, we're only going to do this if indeed the CXN connection is still null. So if CXN equals null, that's the only time you are going to actually initialize CXN, because by the next time the user uses this get connection method, we don't have to do this again if it was already executed before. So cxn now is equal to driver manager that get connection. Oops. And you have the JDBC MySQL colon / the name of our database is store. Our username we're going to use will be root, and our password is simply blank. Well, of course, you need to change this part based on your user access of your database, and then return cxn. Alright, so now we have our database connection. You can use that right here to create a result set. So I have result set rs is equal to db get connection dot create statement and dot execute query, and the query is simply select id from sales, order by sales descending, give it only a limit of 0, 1, so only 1 will be returned. And the result set will have to be imported. Control Shift I once again, and there you go. Let's bump this down. So that's the result set. So if we can actually have a first record on this result set, then we have found something. Otherwise, we'll simply have a 0 or 1 OR number. So we'll initialize an OR number equal to 0 OR number. Okay, but if we were able to find the first record of our result set, of finding the last ID from the sales table, we can actually set OR number is equal to rs.get int id. With that, we can now assign the or put the OR number into the OR number field. So OR number field, let's set text string that value of OR number, and finally just need to add a catch exception, and this time we'll just display an error based on the message of the exception. So that's the init form, which we are going to call immediately when it's loaded. So init form. Okay, so when the add button is clicked, the init form is already executed, so there's already a date and an OR number on those fields. By the way, since I could have just disabled editing on these two text fields, but I changed my mind. Anyway, so when the add button is clicked, next thing is to check if the item number field is actually having any content at all. So if item number field get text that is empty, if it's empty, we can display an error message. So error, the item number is empty, and return immediately. Also, since we need both item and quantity to be numbers, you have to check them for if they are actually numbers, or we are going to get them as a number. So you have to put a try catch here, and the catch we are going to catch a number format exception, and if this happens, we are going to display an error, just invalid entry for item number and or quantity. And this. So here we are going to have int item number is equal to integer that parse int item number field get text. Also int quantity is equal to integer that parse int qty field that get text as well. Okay, now that we have the item number, we need to check that item number if it actually exists or not, and if it does exist, we are going to get the ID, which is its unique identification, its name, description, as well as price. So we are going to need another class here, or do we? We don't. Okay, we don't have to go with having a class, so we'll just have a method for this, another method. On second thought, we'll just create a new class for this, class for the item. Since we already have a sold item details, we'll just create a item class that is going to be used for instantiating an item that can hold all the information about the item, which includes the ID, the name, description, and the price as well. So right click here, create a new Java class, and this class is called item. So this item will have private properties of ID, name, description, private float, price. I think that's all we need. Or we can just add private int qty stock. So again, alt insert constructor, check them all, generate, then alt insert getter and setter, check the whole item, encapsulate, generate. This one took a while, so we have to wait. Alright, now have an override method for toString. This time we're going to return the state, still the name, return name. But here now we are going to add a method for grabbing a single record or a single row in the item table of our database and turn it into an item object for here. So we can instantiate an object of this class item, and the contents will be based on what we got from the database. So we call this public item get item by ID, and give it item ID as parameter. Of course, this is going to use JDBC components, so this is going to throws SQL exception. Alright, so what we are going to do here is we're going to have a result set, look for a result set, and or maybe use a prepared statement. So I think we'll use a prepared statement. So prepared statement PS is equal to db dot get connection dot prepare statement, and the prepare statement is going to be select ID, name, description, price and QTY stock from sales, not sales, from item where ID equals question mark. Control Shift I to import prepared statement. Prepared statement. Okay, let's bump this down. Alright, and now we are having PS that's set int 1 and item ID for that. Now we are going to execute this, and of course we'll have a result set. So result set rs is equal to ps dot execute query. Control Shift I to import result set. Now if rs dot first, so if that's the thing, if the item ID is found on the records, and therefore we are able to execute this fine. So that's going to be here. We're going to create or instantiate an item. So we're going to return that item, return new item, and this item is going to have the ID based on the result set. Get int ID, comma, rs.get string name, comma, rs.get string description, comma, rs.get float price, and finally rs.get int QTY stock. However, if the rs at first failed, meaning there's no item found, we can just return null, and maybe throw an exception. We can just throw an exception, throw new SQL exception, or just call this exception, not just an SQL exception. New exception, and the message would be item number not found. Okay, there you go. So we can use this here. So you'll have item is equal to item dot get, the item is the get item by ID is not, it should be static. Going back here, so we have item dot, alright, get item by ID, and the ID is item number. Hi, what's this error? Unreported exception must be caught. So we only have the number format exception, so we have to catch exception and error. Just get message this. Okay. Now we have this item. We have to add this item into our linked list, which we still don't have. So, and the linked list must be a global variable here on the terminal window. So we have to add it right here. Linked list items is equal to new linked list. Of course, you Control Shift I to import the linked list, which is inside java.util. Okay, so now that we have our linked list, by the way, we have to, it's already instantiated, but it's a good idea to instantiate it only inside the constructor. So items is equal to So once we have our item, we are going to add it into the linked list. So items dot add item. Okay, after adding the item, we must call a method that is going to populate the content on the linked list into the table. So you can just call this refresh table, and which we still don't have. We have to add that in private void refresh table. There you go. So we are going to develop or create here a table model. Okay, a table model, so that we can assign the table model into the JTable, which is named items table. So first we have to define our content. So object contents, which should be a two-dimensional array, equals new object. So we need to determine how many rows and columns we have. So the number of rows is based on the linked list. So items dot size, there you go. So that's going to be the row. The columns, we have the name, description, quantity, the price, and the subtotals, giving us 5 columns. Next is we're going to have the headers. So it's going to be the name, description, price, and quantity, subtotal. Those are our headers. So now we're going to traverse into the items linked list and get each item there and populate it into our contents two-dimensional array. So what we can do is use an iterator. So list iterator, or we can just use convert the items into an array. So items, object items array is equal to items dot to array. So now we can have a for int I is equal to 0, I is less than items array dot length I plus plus. Okay, now so we have contents I 0. We need to have the item first. Item I is equal to, and the items array I. ITM. Okay, so here our contents for I is IT. This is going to be the name, ITM dot get name, and then just copy this. Oops, there's 5 of them. So contents one, this is going to be the description. 2, this is the price. 3, the quantity. The quantity is get, let's see, get quantity stock. I've made a mistake here. We should not be adding item into our items. Rather, we should be adding sold item into our items, and even the item name for our linked list is also incorrect, so we should call this sold items. So I think I got carried away there. So here, so based on that, we need to create a sold item object equals new sold item. So the content of the sold item, sold item details, sorry. It's going to need an item ID. So we have the item ID is based on the item dot get ID. Next is the name, so item dot get name. The description, item dot get description. The quantity, however, is taken from the quantity here, QTY. Then the price is, of course, item dot get price, and that's it. There's the sold item. So that's what we're going to add into the sold items. Sold item. So here, sold items. Same here, so that for our item get it's still of course. There you go. And lastly, here is going to be the get quantity times item dot get price. That's going to be the total. Okay, so now we have finished populating our two-dimensional array of objects. We can now create a default table model. So default table model is equal to new default table model with content, soups, and headers. Control Shift I to import, and now Alt insert inside so that we can override the method cell editable. This one is cell editable, generate and return false, so that it won't be editable. Now just assign this model into our table, items table dot set model. There you go. And also we need to compute the total for this. While this is done, we have to add computation for the total. So let's add a float total, which of course starts with 0f, and every time we are going to just assign this into a variable so that we can only compute it once. Float t TL is equal to that, and what we need to do is total plus equals TL. This will be simply TL, so that after we have changed the model of our items table, we will also update our total, which is a total label dot set text, and here we have string dot format percent dot to f percent dot to f and total. Okay, that's all there is to it, so we can try it right now. Okay, if that actually works. We have an unknown column sales in order class. We have an error, so going back here, sales. Oh, sales is a table, not a column, so where's the problem with that? I think it's in the init form. From sales order by ID. Okay, so we have 0. Okay, of course, if it's not there, it should start with 1, not 0. Alright, so there's your OR number, and it's also a good idea for that OR number to be given with the format. The format should be %0 5 D, I think. Let's see. Alright, and 5 is too small. Make it 8 or 10. That should look good. There you go. So if you click here, the item number is empty. If you type that, invalid entry for item number or quantity. If you have item number 1, you still have the same value because we have quantity here, and you have 2, you click add. Oops, table store that item doesn't exist. It should be items. That was here. Items. There you go. 1 and 2. Add. Alright, so there you go. But our subtotal is not displayed for some reason. Let me see. The problem should be here in the first table. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 5. There you go. It's a problem. 4. Item number 1 and 2 in quantity. Alright, 1750 should times 2 should be 35. And if you add 3 and 1, alright, so there you go. So next is when we click on conclude transaction, this should be stored, all this data should be stored into the database. So 1 row for sales table and 2 rows for sold items table, which will only be storing the ID the quantity, the price, because that's what's here. The sales ID, the item ID, the quantity, and the price. Okay. Also, when you click on add, we need to remove the contents of item number and quantity, or just make the quantity default to 1 instead. So I have here quantity defaults to 1. Also, once we click on the plus sign and we have done the refresh table, we can have the item number field set text to null, and QTY field set text to 1. Okay, then we're going to add conclude transaction. In this case, we are going to ask for cash tender. Simply float cash, or the tender amount. Okay, so you have a float, the parse float, and the option pane that show input dialog, enter amount tender, like that. Okay, so we have the amount tender, and now we're going to get the total, and I'll get the change. Get the total first. The total is already stored right here. Okay, by the way, we should set our this one should add a PHP in there. Okay, so our total is going to be the float, the parse float of the total label get text dot substring int 0, 1, 2, 3. And so the change is simply equal to the total, or the tender, minus the total. And okay, but before we display the change, or we just display the change, so J option pane, show message dialog, the change is just that, and we save the data into the database. What's wrong? Okay. Information or change this, I guess. The component first, this, and then the message change, then the title, confirmation message. So now we're going to store the data onto the database. So start with a prepare statement for the sales is equal to db.getConnection.prepare statement, and our statement is going to be insert into sales date, just the date. Payment type, just give it cash. Date, empty type, values question mark and cash. Okay. So we have to put this inside a try catch. Still have one more error under report exception. Oh. Now, you have sales that's set int 1, and this is going to be the date. So it's should not be set int, but set date, and the date is taken from or set string maybe, and you get the date field dot get text, and then sales dot execute update, and we need to generate the keys for this, or do we? Maybe we don't. Execute update. Okay, there. Return generated keys. Okay, we need to return the generated keys so that we can get the auto incremented ID of this insert statement, so that we can use that when we insert into the sold items, because in the sold items, remember, we need sales ID. However, we only have the item ID here. Okay, once we have updated that, we are going to use a result set to grab the IDs. IDs is equal to sales dot get result set, get generated keys, and then IDs dot first, and now we can have the int generated ID is equal to IDS dot get int column label, column index, the first column is 1. Okay, so 1. Now we have inserted already the sales. Now we're going to have a prepared statement for inserting the sold items. Prepared statement as items is equal to db dot get connection dot prepare statement and the statement is insert into sold items. That's sold items, sales ID, item ID, quantity, price. Sales ID, item ID, quantity, and price. Values, so question mark, comma, question mark, comma, question mark. How many we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now we are going to add them in batch, so that we only have to execute once for all the sold items. So for example, if there are 5 items in here, we will be executing all insertion of 5 items all at once using a batch. So we are now going to iterate on the sold items linked list. Okay, where's that? Here. So we have list iterator is equal to sold items dot list iterator. Control Shift I to import the list iterator. Okay, so now while iter that has next, that's how you are going to enumerate all them. So you have sold item details SID. Okay, sold item details, the iter dot next. Okay, so based on that, we are going to add that into s items. So s items that set int one. So the first parameter is sales ID. We already have the sales ID by using this generated ID, so generated ID. Then as items that set int as well for second parameter is the item ID, so the item ID can be taken from the SID or sold item detail. So SID dot get item ID. There you go. Next is the quantity as items that set int 3 and the quantity SID dot get quantity. Then the price is items that set int, or not set int, set float 4 and the price SID dot get price. There you go. And simply s items dot add batch. At the end of the while loop, we simply say s items dot execute batch. There you go. So after this, just have to I think we really have to display this right after the database has been added. Okay, right here. And after that, we'll simply be clearing everything. So for our items, or for our sold items, simply have to clear removes all the elements from this list. So clear, and after that refresh table, clears everything. Okay, so let's now try this one. Let's add 1 here and 2 for quantity, then have 3, then 2 for quantity still. So 4 and 1 for quantity. Okay, and then conclude transaction. So my total is 83.50, and if I give 100, okay, so my change is 16.5, but the real thing is there, so everything's cleared up. After that is what happens to sales. So now we have 1 column for sales, and sold items we have 3, which have the same sales ID of 1. So perfect. So our program is working. Let's do it again. Let's try. However, look at that, the OR number still is 1. We should call, after the refresh table, we should call the init form again. Okay, so let's run again. So notice, oh, you still have 1. That's too bad. So the init form is not working. Let's check that one up. Okay, select ID from sales, order by limit 01, sending. Let's try this on PHP MyAdmin. We have 1, so what's wrong? Oh, yes, of course. We have to add 1 for this. Sorry. Okay, so we should have 2 now. Alright, so now we have 2. Say we have 3 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 4 and 5. Alright, conclude transaction. We have 165 and the change is 2.75. Okay, that's cool. And now the order number is 3. Going back here, sold items, and now we have 3 sold items with a sales ID of 2, and there are now 2 sales with here. Okay, so this is our very basic point of sale terminal. Now, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, bye bye.